Okay, I am Joseph Lebrecq, and we're going to be looking at easy animated infographics with Flash Professional. So before we even get into Flash Professional, I want to hop over to Adobe Illustrator quickly, because this is where I actually sort of got some ideas and put things together in terms of what I wanted to present for this infographic in terms of information and layout. So we can see that we're preparing a glass of absinthe, which is generally 5 different steps. And here what I've done in Illustrator is actually brought in a lot of different imagery from the web. Here's a bottle of Pernod Ricard. Here's a absinthe glass. Here's an absinthe spoon, and so forth. This carafe I actually made myself in Illustrator. But most of these you can see are vectors. And if we look, you can see that I also created a special layer for each of these objects. And they have multiple paths inside them, so they're complex objects. To create these, I actually just brought in the image and then went over to Object and then Live Paint, and I kind of I vectorized the image basically, and then cleaned it up and filled in some spots and so forth. So we can actually take all of this information and bring it straight into Flash Professional. So if you're used to working with Illustrator to draw your things and lay things out, and Flash Professional might be new to you, this is a great way to start off. So popping back into Flash Professional, let's see exactly how we would do that. So I'm going to create a new ActionScript 3 document here. You'll notice there's a whole bunch of different stuff that you can create inside of Flash Pro CC. You can create HTML5 canvas documents, WebGL, ActionScript 3, and a whole bunch of things based on ActionScript and Flash here, which really all you need to know right now is ActionScript 3. And there's also custom formats that are available now that'll come out down at the bottom here if you have them installed. We're going to choose ActionScript 3 in this case, and it'll give us a default stage size and so forth. So let's actually import our Illustrator file. We'll go to File, Import, Import to Stage, or Import to Library. It's kind of up to you. If you import it to Stage, everything will show up in your timeline and on your stage. If you import it to Library, it won't throw anything onto the timeline or the stage, but everything will end up in your library. In this case, I'm going to import to stage so we can see how it brings everything in here. So I'll choose absinthe assets.ai and hit open. Here I get my import absinthe assets to stage. So I can choose my artboard here. If I had multiple artboards, I could easily pick between them. So you can only import one at a time. Layer conversion, so we can choose to maintain our paths and effects or just flatten our layers. I'm going to maintain them here because I want to use any of the vector information that I have on my objects as symbols inside of Flash Professional. Vector is a lot nicer to work with than bitmap in this case, and Flash Pro works with vectors very well. It's made for vectors. It can use bitmaps, but it's made for vectors. So I want to bring them in as vector information so that I can resize them and so forth without any loss of fidelity. So in text conversion, we can choose to have editable text, vector outlines, or just flatten the text. I'm just going to keep this at the default for now. And we can choose to convert the layers to we can choose to convert the layers to flash layers, a single flash layer, or keyframes across our timeline. And we also get this nice little incompatibility report, so it lets us know that 3D extrude and bevel is, it's not going to work. So what this will basically do is render our sugar cube as a bitmap image, which is okay. And it also lets us know that, hey, there's a bunch of letting values in here that it's not going to be able to import properly. So, okay. We can also choose to match our stage size or import unused symbols. Let's choose to match the stage size, and we'll hit OK. So you can see it's actually really fast bringing that in. And you'll notice it's very, very similar to the layout that we had in Illustrator. There are some differences which we'll have to deal with, but it's not too bad. You'll also notice that if we double-click on any of these objects that we created in Illustrator, that we can go into these groups, and we can see that these actually are vector objects. So these are all different pieces of paths and so forth. So it makes it very easy to work with objects that we created inside of Illustrator, inside of Flash Pro. If you want to go back out to the main root, just hit Scene 1. And we can see here that the layers do indeed match what we created inside Illustrator. So if we wanted to toggle any of these on and off, we could definitely do that. So that's about all I wanted to talk about creating the layouts and images and bring them in. I actually made a lot of decisions around the layout post Illustrator that we'll look at in a sec. So I'm going to close this document here. And what I'll do is create a new ActionScript 3 file. And for this file, I want to make some choices around my stage and how to set it up. So what I'll do is choose this green color, and we'll adjust this later. This isn't going to be the permanent infographic. And what I'm going to do is have kind of a long, narrow sort of thing. So you notice here that I can change the width of my stage and also the length of my stage, the height, by doing this. So if I bust this out to like 400 by 1323, let's say, I get a nice long infographic layout that we can just present from top to bottom, and people can use that. What I'm going to do is actually jump ahead a bit, and I've got something already prepared here which will show us things already arranged from that Illustrator document, because it can take a while to actually arrange things nicely. So here we can see that I have my complete layout here. So I have all those different assets that I brought in from Illustrator arranged nicely in a column like this. And I've got some guides laid out and everything. My layers are nice. Basically all of my text I have in here as actual editable text. So you can definitely edit that text inside of Flash Pro. And any of these things, you'll notice here, if we look in the Properties Inspector with one selected, I've actually created these as movie clip symbols. And basically, what you do when you want to create a movie clip symbol is you just select the thing, and then you go to Modify, Convert to Symbol. So I'm actually going to want to do that for each of these sort of groups of objects so I can control them independently, create animations that are sort of self-contained. So let's go in and say select the bottle and the glass here. And with both of these selected using the selection tool, I can go Modify, Convert to Symbol. So I'm going to choose type of movie clip symbol, and I'll just call this Step 1 and hit OK. You'll notice now they're contained within their own symbol. So what does this mean? The reason we do this is so that we can control this symbol as its own unique object with its own unique timeline. So if we double click on here, and then we can right click and say distribute to layers, because it's all on one layer right now. If we distribute to layers, we can see, hey, we've got our glass and we have our absinthe bottle here. And with this across layers, I can now animate this independent of everything else inside of Scene 1, which is really nice. Going back out to Scene 1, I'm going to do the same thing to each of these. So Modify, Convert to Symbol, Step 2. Now this one's tricky. You'll notice I was able to select both the sugar cube and the absinthe glass, but I missed out on the absinthe spoon. So there are a couple of ways you could do that. I'm going to hold down Shift and click it, and then it's got everything selected. Or you can just simply draw a selection box around them all over again. So Modify, Convert to Symbol, Step 3. And do the same thing with Step 4. Modify, Convert to Symbol. And then here's our final step, Step 5. Modify, Convert to Symbol, Step 5. Okay. So now what we'll do is actually go in and animate one of these. Now, of course, I'm not going to animate every single one of them, because animating 5 steps of complex actions, complex animations, is going to be quite a task. But what I'll do is I'll go in and animate one so you can see how it's done. So going into our step 1 movie clip symbol, you'll notice I already did distribute to layers, and I don't actually need this layer 1 here, so I'll delete that. But I've got my glass and I've got my absinthe. So what we're going to want to do is actually animate this glass tilting up, have a little absinthe pour out into the dose reservoir in our glass. So let's start on that. I'm going to go out to about 80 frames here, and I'm going to choose Insert Timeline Frame, or you can hit F5, and that'll expand that out for us. So the next thing I want to do is on our glass symbol here, I can actually lock that down, and that way we won't edit that at all. And on my absinthe layer, I'm going to actually go in and right-click on there and choose Create Motion Tween. In Flash Pro, when you create animation, you have to create a tween on a frame span. So a motion tween gives us the full range of tools in order to animate. It gives us the most control over the object. And it can only be used on movie clip symbols. So this particular object itself, this bottle, you can see is a movie clip symbol here. And if you go to the library, you can see that I've created all of these as movie clip symbols. Here are the 5 that we just created. So these movie clip symbol groups, step 1 through 5. But I also have movie clip symbols for my carafe, my glass, my spoon, my absinthe, and my sugar. So what this means is that in each of these steps, the glass is replicated in almost every one, but it's always still using that same symbol. That's one of the powers of having movie clip symbols, is that you can sort of cascade them across the entire application. So going in here, let's actually look and see how we might be able to animate this. So using a motion tween, I'm going to go out to around frame 10 here, and I can choose Insert Timeline, and I want to insert a keyframe. You'll notice what happens is we got this little diamond here. So what that'll do is give us a little bit of space to actually have this animation at rest before it starts moving, which is always a good idea. And then we can go in, and maybe I'll go to, say, frame 25, and I can then, using my selection tool, actually move my bottle, and you'll notice a few things happen here. One thing is that we get this nice little dotted line here, and each one of these dots represents a frame that this motion tween takes up. You'll notice that I also have an additional keyframe down here. I'm going to use the transform tool as well, but first I'll scroll up on my stage a bit. And we'll move this up. Oops. I'm going to hit undo. I'm going to have to move the timeline over here first, and then move up. And you can see how I have another frame span. Choosing my free transform tool, I can also do something like rotate. So there's that. And then let's actually move this over. Just like that. So anytime we want, we can actually preview this animation by just scrubbing along the timeline here, or we can use the controls down here to actually play it back in real time and see how well we're doing. And that looks pretty good. So that's nice. Let's actually go and do some additional things to this. I'm going to choose my selection tool again. And one of the neat things you can do, you can see that I hover over these paths and my cursor turns into like this little curved line. So what you can actually do is modify how this tween works. It's pretty cool. Gives you a lot of control. And then it sort of has a more natural motion to it. So that's something you can play with to make your animation a little smoother or have it arc somewhat. And of course, if we wanted to, we could have it go like this too, so it's more of a curlicue. So it just sort of goes up like that. Pretty cool. All right, so now that we've got the bottle there, we're going to want it to rest right there for a little bit as it pours our dose of absinthe into our glass. So what we'll do is, again, go up to Modify or Insert Timeline Keyframe so that basically there's nothing going on right here, right? And then at this point, we can go in and expand out a little bit more. So let's go to 120, insert timeline, frame. So this isn't inserting keyframe, it's just extending our frames. All right, so at this point, we're done pouring our dose, and then we just want to set the bottle back down again. So we'll sort of do the reverse of what we did before. So scrolling out to like frame 85 or so, let's actually use our transform tool again. And we can even make this a little bit different here. And we just change the rotation and the position. Pretty good. All right, so previewing this entire thing, the bottle goes up, pours a dose, and then goes back down. Very nice. So nothing's actually pouring out of this guy here. So what we're going to want to do is actually animate that absinthe going in. So I'm going to choose, first of all, to create an additional layer here. So new layer, and I'll just call this Unleashed. And then we can go in and actually draw in that absinthe being poured in. So here's where it kind of starts, and there's where it stops. So what we can do is lock down our absinthe bottle so we don't mess with that anymore. And then just go in here and choose Insert, or rather Insert Timeline, and we're going to choose a keyframe. Here it doesn't matter, we can choose keyframe or blank keyframe because we don't have anything in this layer, and it creates a new keyframe for us. And I'm going to do the same thing over here when the bottle stops. So Insert Timeline, blank keyframe. All right, and then selecting that keyframe, we can then use drawing tools to draw in some nice absinthe. So let's choose our brush here, and we'll choose just a green color, and kind of look at our brush size and see what might make sense for us. And you know what? We also should actually bring this above the glass layer so we can see it when it actually draws in. So let's do that quick. Just draw in a dose of absinthe in that reservoir. And right now it doesn't look like much because it's sort of just a blob on top of our glass. But if we select this and then choose Modify, Convert to Symbol, Movie Clip Symbol, and we'll just call this Dose, and hit OK. So now that it's a movie clip symbol, we get a number of additional things in our Properties Inspector. So one of the things that we want to use under Display is our blend mode. So we're going to choose Multiply. And you can see, oh, that looks a lot better, right? And not only can this movie clip symbol create this blend mode for us, but it'll also go through and allow us to create a motion tween on this layer right here as well. What we're going to do is Insert Timeline, Keyframe, and going back here, we'll select that object, and what we can do is actually transform this so that it fills up from the bottom. You'll see I move this little transform point down here, and then as I actually go and modify this, it'll sort of fill up from the bottom. You'll notice it isn't doing it perfectly. This is something that takes time, but I can kind of fudge it a little bit so that it works pretty well. Another thing we could do, of course, is draw the absinthe being poured in here, but in the interest of time, you get the idea. We could do all sorts of different things to make this a little nicer. Of course, at the end here, we want the absinthe to stay in the glass. Something I did incorrectly was I put this blank keyframe in here, but you know what? We can just right-click on that, and we can choose Clear Keyframe, and then that blank keyframe is gone. So seeing again, we pour absinthe in, and then put the bottle back down. Pretty good. So what we would have to do now is go into each of these other steps and do the same sort of thing. So, select everything, right click, distribute to layers. And the reason we do that, of course, is that when we animate things, everything that's animated has to be on its own layer or things get weird. So it's best practice to do that. And then we just animate however we want. So in this case, we'd lift up the spoon, put it on the glass. Down here, we do put the sugar cube on the spoon, and so forth and so on. So let's actually have a look at the finished version of this. So going in here, I'll drag the FLA in. And here I've actually gone through and animated fully every one of these objects. So if we want to go in, we can see, here's the one I just did, and I actually added a bit for the pour as well. So if we play this, you can see it pours out and then sets back down. So a little more advanced than what we just did here. And the same thing here. So let's place the spoon on top. It all uses the same concepts that we just went over on that one, but expanded in all these different scenarios. Here we place the sugar cube up top. This next one is the most complex because it has everything on the stage here. So basically pour the water in, and then we tween the absinthe to louche it. And then the final step here is stirring the louche absinthe and so forth. So pretty good. One additional thing I put down here are a number of absinthe facts. It's an infographic. So this infographic does two things. It shows somebody how to prepare a glass of absinthe if they don't know. And then it also provides a number of different helpful facts for newcomers. So what we'll do if we want to see this actually work is we can go test movie, and we can choose to test it in Flash Pro or in the browser. So let's choose Flash Pro to see how that works. By default, what it does is it shrinks everything down. It doesn't look all that great. So let's actually test it in the browser. Test movie in browser. This will open up a browser for us. And let's move that browser window over here. And so here we can see everything in action. And we can scroll down our infographic and see everything working. And these things right now just repeat. A movie clip symbol, by default, it's just going to keep repeating over and over again, unless we tell it to stop. So that is pretty much a good introduction on how to, create these assets, lay them out in Flash Pro, and animate them to create a nice little infographic that is actually animated instead of being static. Additionally, we can also create a static infographic from what we've set up here. To do that, we just go File, and we choose Export, Export Image. And then from here we can choose SVG, JPEG, GIF, PNG. So I'm going to choose a JPEG. I'll just put this on my desktop, hit Save. Then we have different options. So by default, it's going to export the number of different options per the content of the stage. So minimum image area. We actually want to do the full document size, 400 by 2600. I'm going to bump that up to 100 for quality and hit OK. And then it's going to do that for us. And at that point, we have our full infographic right here that we can use anywhere we like on the web.